weeks we've been hearing Spider-Man news, and everyone is sick of it, and everyone is sick of Sony and Disney and their bullcrap. But we got some more Spider-Man news. Sony made a statement regarding the finality of Spider-Man not coming back to the MCU.
I heard about this.
It sounds dumb, and I don't believe it. And I think in a week we'll get to hear that there's probably a deal actually being near execution.
My biggest issue, so they say the doors are closed, but then they, of course, were smart about saying for now, which I think any company would have been smart enough to say that, because, yeah, it's like, even if they don't open again, at least, like, technically you're not lying or anything, but...
At least you won't get called out by a nerd somewhere for being inaccurate with how you worded a sentence.
Exactly. My biggest issue with Spider-Man now being gone from the MCU for good, if this is for good... my biggest pet peeve, like, of all time when it comes to movies and TV show, the biggest pet peeve I have has always been cliffhanger endings that never get resolved. And Spider-Man Far From Home has probably had my favorite after credit scene of all time, my favorite cliffhanger to ever be left on to get me so excited for the next movie. But then, as soon as the thing was first announced, when I was in the middle of class, and like
Tom Holland is still staying on as Spider-Man.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But as soon as I got the text saying the deal's done, you know, it went from being my favorite after credit scene to suddenly my least favorite. Like, I actually straight up hated the after credit scene because of it, despite how awesome it was. Now, as for Tom Holland still being on board, he's still on board, yes, but from things that I've been hearing from different sources, and I can't think of any superhero movie that's done this before, but it seems like it is going to be him as Spider-Man, but with a new continuity.
It has to be with a new continuity, because they're not allowed to use any of the characters they've used thus far, with maybe the exceptions of Aunt May, maybe Ned if they manage to win that fight. That's it. I think that's literally it. I'm not even sure if they're allowed to use the same versions of the villains. Maybe they're allowed to use Gargan. They did use the name Toomes for Vulture, so maybe they're allowed to use Vulture. But he's clearly not the same Adrian Toomes, so that one's in the air possibly. They killed Herman Schultz as the Shocker, so they can't use the same Shocker. Would they have to literally resurrect Herman Schultz in order to use a Shocker in the same continuity?
I mean, personally, if I were Sony, the way I would do it is I would just have the movie take place after Far From Home and have it be that Spider-Man's like with the help of the Avengers in witness protection and moves to San Francisco, and then that's why we don't see any of the familiar characters from Far From Home, but then he meets other Spider-Man characters, like for some reason Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane, Harry Osborn all live in San Francisco now, so it'd be like that same Spider-Man.
They don't have to do San Francisco.
Well, I'd say
Sony can totally use New York.
Well, I'd say San Francisco specifically because it'd be the easiest way for him to be in witness protection, and then it would be the
shield WITSEC.
Yeah, exactly, or sword, witness protection, I guess. But and then it'd also be the easiest way for him to run into Venom. So I think if I were Sony, that's how I would do it. I don't think they're gonna do it that way. I think they're just gonna like pretend. They're just gonna like be like, yeah, this is a new continuity, but it's still Tom Holland. So you know.
So you want my prediction for what will happen and my hope for what could happen, like in the best case scenario?
Sure. I know. Give me both. Yeah.
All right, which do you want first?
Give me what you think is gonna happen first.
All right, what I think is gonna happen is literally they're barely gonna acknowledge the changing universe. Spider-Man's done a lot of traveling already. Maybe they'll have like the next movie, they'll have his identity be ousted as an excuse for him to run away from home, and maybe they'll even tie in the home title like that. It'll be running from home or something, running away from
or
home.
No Place Like Home.
Or No Place. But Home Alone. But they. But that's almost going to be a side thing. It's just going to be an excuse for him not to be around any of the same characters. for him to be on the run, and for him to start new. That's sadly what I think will probably happen. Maybe they'll use some of the same villains. Maybe Scorpion will make an appearance. Maybe the Sinister Six will start making an appearance. He'll start making appearances in other people's films. Those films will take place in and out of New York, but he won't have any access to his to the people he knew at school or the people he knew at S.H.I.E.L.D. They'll use some of the same characters, most likely. Aunt May, certainly, and because there are multiple times in the comics where this isn't even an inaccurate life form, where like he and May like live in like hotels and stuff, on the run. That like post Civil War or during Civil War, this happened when he rebelled against Iron Man. His face had been ousted to the world. He was being hunted by heroes and villains alike, and he, MJ, and Aunt May were basically on the run constantly. That's what led to Aunt May being like shot. I think they could probably pull something like that. Aunt May is gonna get hurt. It'll be that'll be the story, and after that, he'll just be a solo hero. Maybe they'll even throw in little hints that there are lots of other heroes in the world, even though they won't directly reference the Avengers ever. They'll reference the fact that he used to be part of something, and they'll basically just make an excuse for him never to interact with any of those. He's just solo Spider-Man now. That's probably what's gonna happen.
Well, pretty sure he's gonna be with the Venomverse.
Yeah, but that can happen in his same universe, essentially. All they have to do is say that he's not leaving the universe or anything. He's not leaving the world. He's not even really running away from New York or anything necessarily. They might even be able to reference that that an old friend set them up with like an underground hiding place, like maybe that Aunt May got an identity change or something, or they got a new start thanks to an old friend. And they can like hint that it was Happy or something. Say it was Aunt May's ex or something. They could do any number of things to basically divorce him from everything in the Marvel universe without actually taking him and putting him in some new universe, and then they can just have him interact with the Venom. In fact, if anything, I think this will lead to like the soft canonization that Venom and Morbius and such are in the MCU. I mean, extremely soft. Like fans of Spider-Man will think this and no one else. Yeah.
It's going to lead to what could possibly end up being like a continuity error later, because we're going to have, two different vampires in the Marvel. We'll have the Sony version of vampires, and if I have to guess, I'm pretty sure they're going to end up not matching. Like the vampires in Morbius aren't going to match the vampires in Blade.
Yeah, now that this deal has fallen through, they probably won't. But that's also not breaking from continuity. In the MCU, they weren't originally part of the same continuity anyways. The Morbius was a scientific experiment gone wrong, not actually related to vampirism, in the same way that the mystical vampirism from Marvel Comics was. They later tied that crap together, using a whole bunch of comic book bullshit. Comics
are weird. We love you, Movie Bob.
But yeah, like it was originally different anyway, so that's not even. They can tie it together later if they ever can do it. Tie it back into MCU, anyways, and them separating and doing this and showing that they can do it successfully would give them a lot of leverage for if they ever did want to remerge with MCU, which would be profitable for them. So I think they'd still want to do that. I think these deals are done now. I don't think they're done forever. And I think they specifically just want more leverage.